We have a lot to talk about in this morning's video as the weather is about to get much more active in the month of January. We got a lot to discuss, so we're going to talk about this storm system that's going to impact most of the country this week into this weekend. We'll do that. There'll be a timestamp up for that. We'll bring you a lot of details. Severe weather risk. There's going to be a winter weather side to this also, but I first want to spend a lot of time on this pattern for mid-month, and we'll ooze a little bit into the second half of January also. We're starting to lock in the idea of what we've been honking the horn at, which is, something happening mid-month. And it looks like we're going to have a trough that digs down. What is this trough going to bring? It's a dip in the jet. It's going to bring a storm system. Is it? Or is it just going to bring some cool air? Is it going to bring everything in between? We got to figure that one out, so we'll get very detailed on that. Discuss the upper pattern, show you some fancy graphics and all that, and then we'll round the video off with today's weather. My name is Mitch. Good Monday morning. Hope you guys are doing well. Subscribe if you haven't. Like the video if you like it. And if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please drop it in the comments below. Let's get rocking and rolling this morning. So we're going to discuss the upper pattern, kind of nerd out with you guys at first. I'm going to start this off with Friday morning. That's this Friday, January the 9th. Timestamp up here and up here. Just focus on the day of the week and the date itself. So the blue colors, this is lower pressure, lower heights. Normally there's a storm system associated with this. It's a trough of low pressure, whether that's an upper trough, cutoff low, energy, whatever it may be. And I'll discuss it as we go. It brings cold air. And then we got the warmer colors you see on your screen, the yellows, the orange, the reds. That's higher heights, higher pressure, a ridge. Normally brings above average temperature. So if we start the pattern off with later this week, Friday, we have this trough digging down across areas of the western and eventually into the central U.S. We have this ridge over areas of the eastern U.S. This is going to bring warmer than average temperatures. And if you look at the 10-day forecast, 7-day forecast on your local weather apps, and you live in the eastern U.S., you're going to see that the temperatures gradually warm. There's a warming trend, and that makes sense because a ridge is going to overtake the entire eastern U.S. as we move later into this work week, into this weekend. But this area in blue, this is going to bring a storm system, a shot of cooler air behind it. So some unsettled weather on the way for the middle country and eventually into the eastern U.S. And as we move into Saturday, you're going to see that blob of blue energy with a shot of cooler air behind it. This isn't going to bring a lot of cold air by any means, but this is going to sweep across, move across the eastern U.S., bring some weather. It's going to be a warmer system, not a lot of cold air to work with, but there's still going to be a winter weather side of this, and we'll discuss that when we get about to the middle portion of the video when we really get detailed on that storm system. But let's move past this time frame. When we start to get to early next week, we're into the 12th to the 13th of January. You start to get this spiking ridge over the western U.S., western areas of Canada. We call that a positive PNA, ridge out west. Now in response, we're going to get a dip in the jet, a trough over the eastern U.S. So watch what happens. You're going to see a lot of blue, and please don't associate blue with snow immediately. This is the pattern in the upper levels, 500 millibars, 18,000 feet up in the air. But this is a great thing to look at when we're trying to figure out our pattern. So you're going to see a lot of blue show up here. This is lower pressure. It's probably going to bring some colder air. And you're going to have some energy around. Now, are we going to get the dots to connect to bring a big storm system? We got to figure that one out. But you definitely have a ridge flexing across areas, well, all of the western U.S. into areas of western Canada. Okay, we got a feed of cold air in response. We got a little bit of a negative NAO in place, a little bit of blocking the higher latitudes, but everything kind of cancels each other out because we got lower heights kind of in the Arctic region, and all this is the Arctic region, but we kind of have more of a positive AO because of these lower heights in place, and then a little bit of blocking showing up over Greenland, more of a neutral look. So let's just call everything neutral up there. Remember, we need a negative AO, negative NAO. That means high latitude blocking up here. That means we can dislodge more cold air, really buckle this jet stream down here. But regardless, we got a ridge building up. We need this ridge to really spike all the way up to Alaska for us winter weather fans. This will really dislodge some cold air down to a lower 48. But still a look that allows for the buckling of the jet down into the eastern U.S. This immediately creates lower heights, and we can have the threat of some colder air spilling down and the potential for a storm system. Now, we continue to move forward here, and the signal grows. So we get the even darker corridors of blue right here. This is lower pressure. So there's energy right here with likely some cold air kind of funneling down into this energy, this dip in the jet. And, if we can get some energy that kind of scoots across the southern stream, some energy that dives it kind of down the backside of this ridge, you really need this ridge to spike like this. This would allow some energy to really nosedive and to dig more. And at the same time, you have energy down here in the south, and then cold air spilling down, and we can have a storm system right in here, something like that. Just kind of drawing a random circle, not in a random area, but just kind of in an area across the eastern U.S. So the pattern supports something, especially for mid-January. That's a strong trough signature across the eastern U.S. So remember, trough, energy in the atmosphere, a dip in the jet, cold air is able to kind of spill down into this dip in the jet kind of avenue of energy, and therefore, depending on how cold the air is, the time of the year, then we can get some winter weather. So the look continues, and then trough goes away, and then we have a big jumbo kind of broad trough that shows up towards the end of the run. And it does show a flex in the ridge right here, but I wouldn't worry too much of that. I think model guidance is really going to favor a ridge in the longer range, but I think it could be wrong. I think this is an intense press of cold air diving down. It really is a cross-polar flow. It wants to kind of extend the trough over here. This would kind of make this ridge flex, but that is a lot of cold air dropping down and really funneling into this area. If this guidance for this specific time frame, which is all the way out to the 18th, is correct, and I don't think it is. I think we're going to have a cold air press against this ridge, and I think as we work our way closer to this time frame, I have a feeling that this ridge might disappear, but it might not. So regardless, let's focus more so on that trough digging across the eastern U.S. If we look at some other model runs like the Euro AI Ensemble, we just looked at the EPS, which in my opinion is the king of all models. But these AI models are doing well. They have a very good score and good rating on what actually ends up verifying. But it's even a better signature for ridging out west. All the way up to Alaska. We even have some ridging over Alaska and just a steep trough across the eastern U.S. And it's much more of a steep ridge, spiking ridge, allowing for this kind of steep drop right here, allowing for energy to kind of nosedive. And cold air is definitely spilling down into this trough. Got a little bit of blocking in the high latitude region, but I like seeing a little bit more ridging in Alaska like that. That's good. And you can see this area in blue right here. This tells me that the southern stream is active. So energy, can we get a meetup somewhere into here? Can we connect the dots? I say that a lot on all my social media platforms. When I say that, I mean, can you connect energy? Can you dive energy to the west enough? Can you connect the dots? And you look at the Canadian Ensemble, it shows it too. It shows a ridge trying to get all the way up to Alaska, ridge over areas of the western U.S., trough and response in the eastern U.S. And then you look at the GFS Ensemble, shows the same thing. And it's trended to this because it wasn't showing this before. But this is, GFS and its ensemble is a struggle bus. It just does not do that well. And then you look at the GFS AI Ensemble. I'm not sold on this yet. This is kind of a new model and ensemble on the block, but it shows the same thing, same time frame, midway next week, day 9 to day 10. We're starting to work this closer to us. We're starting to firmly get this inside day 10, in my opinion. If you look at the actual Euro run itself, it fits its ensemble run almost to a T, about as good as you can ask for. And it shows the storm system that we're about to break down, going across the country. This is this coming Saturday. Okay, this sweeps in, sweeps out. Then it shows a strong trough signature, diving down, a lot of energy, dipping the jet, diving down across the eastern U.S. And we got little pieces of energy. Can they connect? Not quite sure, but this is getting into the day 9, day 10 range. Now we got just troughing over Alaska. We really have a pretty strong ridge signature right here across the western U.S., but we really need to spike this all the way up to Alaska. This will allow energy to kind of nosedive. A lot more cold air can enter the pattern if we can get a ridge that spikes up to Alaska. We call that a negative VPO. This is a positive VPO because you have, basically Alaska is cold, to make things very simple without getting all hung up on the teleconnections. But can we get some energy down here? And the actual operational Euro shows a lot of energy, cold air trying to spill down into the eastern U.S. Okay, and you continue and you have this storm system trying to show something. This almost does something, and we're going to show you what it looks like at the surface when we show these individual model ones here in a second. And the Euro shows, once you get past day 10, the same thing on the Euro ensemble. This is quite literally pieces of the polar vortex dropping down. You can see little lobes right here. And I mean, each one of these is kind of dropping and funneling cold air down. And it has actual northern stream energy associated with it. And there's a lot of cold air dropping down at the end of the Euro. I mean, this is a big jumbo trough dropping down. This would sling a ton of cold air down. And you're getting a lot more cold air, digging more of a digging trough, because now you have a spiking ridge all the way up into Alaska. Now, this is not as much of a positive PNA, more of a neutral, a little bit of ridging over the western U.S., but you got troughing over the western U.S. too. So in response, what happens? The cold air digs a little bit further to the west. Doesn't mean it won't eventually come to the eastern U.S., but this is just one operational run. You go all the way to the end of the run, and sure enough, we get this zonal kind of Arctic flow across the country. That's a lot of cold air. So when you look at these operational runs, I know a lot of people want to say, hey, let's see the fantasy runs. Well, let's start off this Thursday. You can see this first storm system moves in. We'll get detailed on that here in a second. And sort of another impulse of energy dives down the base of this trough. This could bring a snow event. We'll slow down on this here in a second across the middle of the country. And then a shot of cold air follows. Okay, then we kind of have a moderation period for a couple of days. And then we have another trough that digs down. You can see some Gulf energy bubbling down here. Does show a little bit of snow, but I think this is some feedback issues. I don't know if that's actually even cold enough for snow. I'm not going to pull up the temperatures here, but it does show some snow in Mississippi. That's not a forecast, guys, but we're starting to get past day 7. We're getting early next week. This is Tuesday, January 13th. Cold air diving down to the middle of the country, and we got some energy right there. And when you see that 540 line sort of buckle like this, there's energy right here. And this kind of dives in, pivots through into the eastern U.S., which we'll show in a second. If you're like, Mitch, I live in the eastern U.S., I don't care about the central U.S., well, just hold tight. I'll have a timestamp up for you. Or you can just skip right ahead. And then a lot of cold air dives down at the end of the run, past 300 hours out. A little bit past that mid-month time frame, shows a winter weather event across the middle of the country. I just think things are going to get much more active for the second half of January. A lot of cold air spilling down. The opportunity, and I said this, it seems like 2 weeks ago, the opportunity is there for an Arctic outbreak for the second half of January, mid-month to the second half of January. There's tons of cold air to the north in the higher latitudes, just ready to be tapped into. Are you going to get moisture links up, or is it just going to be cold and dry? So that's the Euro. What about the latest GFS? There's that system. First impulse of energy. Second impulse of energy kind of moves in, shows some snow this Friday and Saturday across the upper Midwest. Shows some heavy snow. And then we get into early next week. Not a whole lot going on. We get into the 13th to the 14th. To the 15th, all the way 300 hours out. And I mean, it looks pretty dry. And then at the very end of the run, you have a deep trough that digs down. And it looks like it tries to do something in the eastern U.S. with this run. And a lot of cold air dropping down at the end of the run on the GFS. But it doesn't show any kind of craziness as far as any sort of fantasy runs or anything like that. Now the Euro for the eastern U.S. is very interesting. First off, watch out for some freezing rain. We'll dive more into this here in a second when we go over today's forecast. But we're going to have a messy kind of wintry mess across the Northeast Tuesday into Wednesday, starting from the Great Lakes region into the Northeast. We could get some heavy, wet snow in the interior Northeast from this, but we move past that. Here comes the big storm system going across the country, a lot of rain with it. Much needed rain across the deep south as we're getting into Friday and a Saturday. This moves across the mid-south. Hopefully we can get some of this rain across the eastern U.S. too, but you can see a big system moving across the Great Lakes region. We got to watch this. This could be a powerful winter storm this weekend across sections of the Great Lakes region. And then we got cold air that kind of comes back around. You got some energy in the form of some snow embedded into this trough, digging down on the Euro. This is getting into Sunday, not too far away from us, about 6 days. And then we move into kind of the period, after the storm system and the next big trough that drops down. And here it comes. This is the mid-month time frame. It's the 13th into the 14th. We got energy kind of ahead of this trough that digs down that we've been talking about. The blue snow, green is rain. We got some snow across areas of the Appalachian Mountains, okay? This is mainly rain east of the mountains, but it's close. I mean, this is a cold rain, and we got sort of a low pressure trying to develop off the coast of the eastern U.S., and it does, but the cold air just does not get involved. But that's a lot of energy off the coast of the eastern U.S. And then some cold air filters in behind it, and then we have something digging right here. Not a ton of cold air at the surface. Aloft, the cold air is there, and that is a classic Miller A track with just not a ton of cold air to kind of work into. It's 1,000 millibar low. This is next Friday. There's something there, but it just does not connect. And then we move past. Man, I'm telling you, there's something there, right there. And there's just, we'll figure it out. This is past 10 days out. And then a lot of cold air is just kind of there. And then the very end of the run, we're getting close to the 18th and 19th, get kind of what we call an antifront type setup. A lot of cold air chasing moisture, but it does show some snow as far south as northern Alabama. And it shows a lot of cold air diving down. And then we get to the end of the run. But when you start to see these blue lines kind of get tight beside each other, that's cold Arctic air, but cold Arctic air kind of jumbled up. And there's a gradient. When I see these lines all kind of jumbled up together, this tells me that there's a tight temperature gradient somewhere. Now the GFS, what does it show? Same thing. We get in the midweek this week. We got kind of a wintry mix up here in the Northeast. We'll get detailed on that over the next couple of videos. We'll spend some time on it here in a second. And then there's that system later this week that cuts across kind of the east central U.S. And then more energy continues to ride this trough. The GFS likes the idea of a soaker across areas of the Appalachian Mountains, east and west of it. And then we got this spinning low pressure. This will develop some snow across the Great Lakes region. And then we continue to move forward. And then we get into early next week. Kind of a calm period, some cooler temperatures. And then that trough digs down with cold air, cold front associated with it, energy. And you can already see energy bubbling up ahead of this trough. Okay, this dip in the jets shows a storm system around the same time frame as the Euro. You can see a touch of snow in the central Alps, and it actually pops off a low pressure in time to meet up with some cold air kind of midway next week. Shows a swath of accumulating snow for the southern New England, and a lot of cold air dives down. A lot of energy. I'm telling you, there's a lot of energy right here off the coast of the eastern U.S. with cold air over the eastern U.S. at this point. That's a lot of energy right here. I'm telling you, there's something looming around this time frame. We've been talking about it for a long time. Nothing might happen though. Nothing might happen. There's a chance that nothing happens. Let's try to talk right here. But then we get past 300 hours out, a lot of cold air dives down, and it does show more snow for the Appalachian Mountains, but the dots just aren't able to connect really for the eastern U.S. But if you look at the end of the run, there is a ton of cold air diving down. You got Gulf moisture just hanging out down here. You got energy. You see how you have energy? Let's draw something here. See how you have energy right here and then energy down here? This is northern stream. This is southern stream. You get these to kind of connect with cold air, then you get something. You're working with a more powerful system. You got to start to connect some dots here. But, speaking of energy, kind of the colors you see on your screen, like the yellows, the blues, the greens, and even some orange and some red you might see. This is energy in the atmosphere, and this is the smoothed out ensemble mean from the Euro ensemble. And this is the first storm system that moves in later this week. And then here comes the signal for that next trough that dives in. You can see a dip in the jet. You can see some energy right here, energy associated with the trough itself. Can you get some type of connection between both? This is getting into that day 9, day 10 time frame. Can you get connection of that southern stream, of that northern stream, and get something working with? Now, there's always a couple ways you can do this. Sometimes if you can dig northern stream enough to the west like this, and there's enough of it aggressively digging to the south, sometimes it can get right here, take on a neutral tilt, and then eventually take on a negative tilt. And that energy can, begin to turn up, kind of pivot up, and then eventually pop off a low pressure at the base of the trough. Or you can just get help from that southern stream, sort of phase the energy together and create the opportunity for a stronger storm system. And in this time of the year, it could be a winter storm. So you look at the Euro ensemble mean, it's not impressive for the South. And I know I'm speaking a lot for the South. For the northern sections of the country, you're going to continue to get chances of snow. You do have a signal for the Appalachian Mountains, all the way down to North Carolina, Tennessee, but nothing too crazy. Now, if you look at the GFS ensemble, and this only goes out to, this doesn't go all the way out. It goes out far enough to about the morning of the 18th. And doesn't show a whole lot, but I don't like looking at the GFS ensemble anyways because there's not as many members. It's skewed more by 1 or 2 members. But as far as temperatures, the orange, the reds, kind of that burnt brown burgundy color with the whites embedded into it. That's above average temperature. So this is starting off Wednesday afternoon. If you look at the color key down here, the whites right in here, that's over 25 degrees above average. So torch is on the way. We've trended to just very warm temperatures. Look at Friday morning. We get into Friday evening and above average temperatures across the eastern U.S. But in response to that trough, dropping down across the western U.S., you can see it begins to cool off. See the blues and the greens, that's colder anomalies. And then as that trough swings across the eastern U.S., some cooler than average temperatures, around average temperatures, begins to greet us across the southern tier of the country. Big warm up across Canada. You see this big area of warm air across Canada. This is gonna negatively affect our cold air source. So we're getting colder than average temperatures across the southern tier of the country. And then we look at that time frame of that trough digging down, and you don't see a ton of below average temperatures set up across the eastern U.S. in response. And I think that just the fact that we're gonna, in a way, nuke our cold air source, it's gonna impact the level of cold air that comes down with that trough. But we don't need deep cold air this time of the year, even areas further to the south. But then you go to the end of the run and everybody cools down. And that's the signal I'm watching for some really deep cold air for the second half of January. The entire country within a couple days cools down. So we look at the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook. The eastern U.S., between the 12th and the 18th, they're now mainly going for near normal temperatures, around average temperatures. There is an area where they're leaning towards below average temperatures in areas of Florida and southern Georgia. And then the middle and western areas of the country call for a warm up, and that makes sense because we're going to get a ridge that spikes across the western U.S. in this time frame in response to a trough digging down across the eastern U.S. It's going to cool us off. So it makes sense. Now let's move this a little bit closer to us, okay? We kind of spoke what was way out in front of us. Let's move this a little bit closer to us. So I do want to start off by saying Thursday and Saturday could bring us severe weather. But Friday, which is what you're looking at here, we already have a 15% risk. A slight risk at day 5. This is Friday. So this basically means we have a level 2 out of 5 risk of severe weather in this yellow area. So this does include just south of Evansville, all the way down to Alexandria, Louisiana. It includes both Jackson, Mississippi, Jackson, Tennessee, Memphis. It includes Vicksburg, all the way up into Dyersburg, Clarksville, areas of the Buda, Missouri, just outside of Jonesboro. So there's a 15% risk of severe weather in this area. If we look at what's going on, we're going to start this off Thursday morning. You're going to see a low pressure. This is popping off at the base of this trough, digging down across the western to central U.S. And, I'm going to kind of breeze through this pretty fast, and we take it into about Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening. You see a 995 low. And this is just the operational euro. And you can see kind of the yellows and the oranges right here. This indicates some thunderstorms, I think, that will be is likely going to happen across areas of the Mississippi Valley. But you can already see another low pressure, a short wave is another way to call it, kind of following behind it. But there's that low pressure cutting across areas of the Great Lakes region. This is going to be 99% rain more than likely. But, we start to get into Friday. This could be our bigger day of severe weather chances. And we get into Friday afternoon, Friday evening, there's a low pressure cutting across. And I think this first low pressure is going to bring the moisture up into the Ohio Valley. This second low pressure allows for energy to override the overlapping ingredients. So you can see just the output of this is just greens, yellows, and orange, but just this is thunderstorm activity. And you can see there is a cold air side to this, a winter weather side on the back side of the low where cold air is filtering behind the trough. So, even as we start to move into Saturday, this is Saturday evening, and this turns into a pretty strong low pressure, and we could even get thunderstorms across the eastern U.S. for Saturday. We'll just have to watch. But in response to this low pressure, This is Thursday. You can see the first initial low, shortwave, surface low ejecting across areas of the Midwest, and you have this impulse of kinematics, wind flow aloft. This is at 500 millibars, 18,000 feet up in the air. This is an ingredient that supports severe weather. Okay, and then we kind of move this through and we start to move into Friday. You can see another low pressure developing right into here. And this is really going to enhance the favorable winds aloft for severe weather, kinematics. When I say kinematics, I'm meaning winds. What kind of favorable wind pattern do you have in place? So this will move up, and at the same time, keep in mind that all these winds, right, this is yanking up moisture from the south. So it's pulling up these better moist profiles, higher dew points further to the north because we have that southwesterly flow. You see that wind barb right there? It's pointing that way. That means the flow is coming out of that direction. Now, we're not close enough to look at the low-level jet and stuff like that. That can really dramatically increase what we call the moist sector. But we'll start to look at that when we get a little bit closer. But what kind of moisture is this overlapping Thursday? We already have a slither of moisture all the way up to Mississippi Valley, Mississippi River area. Dew points in the 60s. That supports severe weather. And then we start to move into Friday. Deeper moisture moves into the picture, okay, for areas of the western deep south. But we also have this area of moisture that gets kind of a tongue of moisture that gets all the way into the Ohio Valley areas of the southern Midwest. So you're probably going to have a severe weather day. Even up here, even though this doesn't bring the severe weather threat up in here into like Kentucky or southern Ohio, I could see severe weather being possible in that area. But the best overlapping condition certainly is right into this region right here. If it sounds like I'm talking loud, guys, I'm having to drown out my neighbor's dog. I have no idea how they just let their dog bark at the back door nonstop. But it is incredibly irritating. I'm not mad at the dog, so my animal lovers, don't get mad at me. But I know as a dog owner myself, I let my dog bark a few times before I go out there and address something, because normally when a dog is barking, the dog, something's going on. But my neighbor will just let their dog bark until the cows come home. So that's why I'm kind of having to talk loud. I'm having to drown that out. You might not even notice. But anyways, overlapping conditions for severe weather. There is going to be a winter weather side of this. First, short wave doesn't do it. Second one, surface low, potentially does. We have this area of snow breaking out Friday and the Saturday across the middle of the country. You know, this could start off in Colorado Friday morning, move across Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa as we're getting into Friday night, Saturday morning, and it could turn into a decent-sized snowstorm across the upper Midwest. Iowa, Wisconsin, the UP of Michigan, backside energy coming in behind it. And this could be our next big winter storm. But we'll figure out the details with this. You can see the snow signal with this. When you look at the 48-hour snowfall footprint, starting off Friday morning, this is going to bring some snow across the Rockies, and then you're going to see that footprint of snow across the middle of the country, across the upper Midwest, into areas of the Great Lakes region. You got a few inch ensemble mean average going across this region, so this is definitely going to bring some snow, and it really enhances across the upper Midwest, Great Lakes region, where it increases to several inches of a snowfall mean. Deep breath. All right, today's weather. We got a clipper starting to move into the northeast. This is going to bring some snow, light snowfall accumulations for you guys as standards. Middle of the country, quiet with a ridge building over. We got troughing beginning to move across the western U.S. We've already discussed that pattern. We got energy associated with that. The southern section of the country, this is certainly quiet. Now, I will mention some of this falling in the form of snow is not actually hitting the ground yet. This radar kind of shows a lot of Virgo. But as far as watches, warnings, and advisories, we do have a lot of dense fog across the southeast. Listen, on the way to the gym this morning about 4:15, I mean, I couldn't see like 20 feet in front of me. It was crazy fog. But we got winter weather advisories across the upper Midwest. This is for some freezing rain on the way. We could have some decent totals with that too. We'll talk about that here in a second. But we do got some alerts out west. Conditions in the southeast today, quiet, nice day of weather, nothing to speak on. Clouds might hang around for a while, but overall, no high impact weather. Now, the northeast, a clipper will move through. This will bring some moderate to at times heavy snow. This will make it all the way into Boston. We'll get some snow this evening. and just bring snow across New England. Nothing too crazy with this. This is going to bring some accumulations. This is New York. A few inches of wet snow. Nothing compared to what you've seen with all the lake effect snow lately. But you know what interests me, can't talk, is the southern New England area. I mean, you can get. I know you've been nickeling and diming it in Boston this year. You still haven't got really a big winter storm yet. Pulling for you guys who want winter weather, but you can get about an inch of snow between now and the next 48 hours, and a touch of snow everywhere else across southern New England. A few tenths here, inch and a half there, and if I missed anybody across this region, a little bit of snow on the way for Vermont, New Hampshire. Nothing too crazy at all, though. You guys can handle this. South Central U.S., nothing to really show you guys. Quiet. I mean, even the system on the way is not going to really significantly impact you guys. So continues to be quiet there. Now, the north central U.S., we got a quiet day of weather, and then some freezing rain is going to develop tonight across Wisconsin, areas of Minnesota. And then we got kind of a bigger push of moisture maybe behind this. But, you know, the HRRR model really doesn't even show the secondary push. I really think it's underdoing moisture, but, you know, it's showing a freezing rain event across these areas tonight, so be aware. And if you look at the ice forecast between now and about Wednesday morning, a few tenths of an inch of ice is possible. This is freezing rain, so maybe a tenth of an inch of freezing rain in Minneapolis. But, you know, you start to get into Wisconsin here, and this is notable ice totals. I mean, here in central Wisconsin, you can get over a quarter of an inch of freezing rain. Not ice storm criteria type stuff, but be aware of the freezing rain in this area over the next 48 hours, 2 days or so. And I will show you Michigan losing some gas here. Touch of freezing rain is possible with this, but I don't think it'll be anything too crazy. Western U.S., energy continues to flow through. Man, that dog is barking. Woo. Energy continues to flow through. And, yeah, I mean, we're going to get a big storm across the Pacific Northwest. A lot of higher elevation snow in the Cascades. And you guys will just continue to be active for at least the first half of the work week. Eastern U.S., as far as temperatures, we're going to get a thaw coming up. So we're going to warm above freezing across areas of the upper Midwest. Still locked in below freezing across the Northeast. But then we start to get into the southern tier of the country. It warms up. And then this is the Western U.S. That's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless all y'all. We'll continue to try to figure out this pattern. Follow me on Facebook. Follow me on X, Twitter, whatever you call it. I still call it Twitter. I'm much more active there. So if you really want to get some good updates, follow me there, especially when things get really active. But have a wonderful day. Make today great. I know it's the first Monday of the year. I know it's brutal. It's kicking my butt too, but we're going to make it through and have a fantastic first Monday of 2026. God bless.